This is another mention of Elon Musk on the program today. I think I'm giving him too much airtime, but basically Taiwan, I think, have rejected Elon. They've told him that Taiwan is not for sale after he said the country was part of China at a business summit. It isn't the first time, as I understand it, that Mr. Musk has angered the Taiwanese government.
That's right. You'd be disappointed to hear. I think the last time I was on this show was also also to speak about Elon Musk. So he's fast becoming a persona non grata in Taiwan. Musk has basically compared the situation, the cross-strait tensions we see between Taiwan and China, to the situation that exists between Hawaii and its relationship to the US. So implying that Taiwan is a part of China. Taiwan's foreign minister and a lot of the Taiwanese officials have basically responded very stridently to his latest interjection here. Taiwan's foreign minister put out a tweet that's been shared very widely where he said that Taiwan's not a part of the PRC, China's official name, and it's certainly not for sale. So the time I was last speaking to you, I think about Musk's comments, his last kind of foray into cross-strait affairs was an FT interview he gave about a year ago, in which he said in order to kind of ease cross-strait tensions, that Taiwan should become a special administrative region of China, which is the same kind of setup that Hong Kong has with China, and is rejected by an overwhelming majority of Taiwanese people, especially since they've seen the crackdown, the Chinese crackdown on civil liberties and freedoms in Hong Kong there.
And clearly Musk's grasp of international politics, foreign policy, et cetera, has not improved since we last spoke a year ago. But just speaking of those tensions between China and Taiwan, exacerbated perhaps by Mr. Musk in his own lunchtime, he'd like to think. How is the situation at the moment?
Well, the tensions are certainly not easing. So just today, we've had one of the largest Chinese aircraft incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone ever recorded. So over 100 Chinese military aircraft entered that air defense identification zone, more than 40 across the median line of the Taiwan Strait. So it's a kind of extension of what we see usually, kind of Chinese intimidatory tactics, but I think just an augmentation, a consistent augmentation of those types of tactics. So we've seen over the past few months that China's trying to increasingly send more aircraft around the entirety of Taiwan's mainland, whereas before we would kind of see them jut out into the Taiwan Strait. So more aircraft are surrounding the entirety of the island. And we're seeing different types of aircraft. So, for example, aircraft that can refuel in midair. So all of this just a kind of a reminder to Taiwan that the threat from China continues to exist. And I think is not going anywhere. That's what they want to suggest to Taiwan. And especially, I think the tensions that we've seen kind of grow over the past few years are certainly not going to go anywhere as we approach Taiwan's presidential election, which is scheduled for January next year.
And on the topic of Taiwan's presidential election, I understand that the Taiwanese billionaire Terry Gou has decided to pick a Netflix star as his presidential running mate, despite her having no political experience. So what are her credentials? Who is she?
So Tammy Lai is a very famous actress in Taiwan. As you mentioned, she has no political experience, but she has been a very kind of highly visible figure within Taiwan over the past few months because she starred in an extremely popular and influential Netflix TV series, a series in which she actually played a presidential candidate.
Stop it.
Who wins exactly. So kind of a life imitating art situation. But the series was very popular in Taiwan because it catalyzed essentially Taiwan's Me Too movement. So one of the main storylines of that series is a political staffer who raises sexual harassment allegations against a fellow colleague and is encouraged to pursue those allegations through. And it really catalyzed a very wide-ranging Me Too movement across Taiwan over the course of this year. So, you know, I think Terry Gou, who is, as you mentioned, this billionaire, he's kind of a slightly older gentleman. I think is probably trying to garner some of the younger vote within Taiwan, and someone who, you know, by kind of bringing someone on board who has been very popular amongst young people as this kind of artistic figurehead for Taiwan's recent Me Too movement.
Is it Is it a win-win situation? I mean, is it likely to bolster his potential of getting into the presidential palace, or is it likely to backfire? I mean, if it was that easy, every political candidate would be harnessing a showbiz star, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Terry Gore's chances are already pretty low. So of the four main presidential candidates we have now in Taiwan, he is currently polling last. He was actually in the running to be the candidate for the main opposition party, but was beaten out by the current candidate. So I think there are some people who are interpreting his decision to run anyway as a kind of expression of frustration with the main opposition party. I think he will struggle to get into the presidential office. What most kind of analysts and observers of Taiwanese politics say is that he's basically splitting the opposition vote. So one of the key things we have in this upcoming presidential election for the first time really is four main candidates, which is really unprecedented. We have one from the ruling party who is leading in most polls, and then three opposition candidates. You know, there has been discussion amongst those that they would kind of team up in some way to unseat the ruling party. But I think, you know, amongst those other opposition parties, and I've been, you know, going to some of these events and speaking to staffers from those political parties, and they're just completely dumbfounded and frustrated that Terry Gore has decided to run anyway. So the fact he's brought on this kind of Netflix star with very little political experience, I think there'll probably be some shrugging of shoulders and throwing their hands up in the air, kind of trying to figure out what his strategy exactly is.